Nestled in Arizona's Verde Valley, at the junction of Hartwell Canyon and Lloyd Canyon, the Bradshaw Ranch lies 12 miles outside Sedona. In May of 2003, it became federal land with a $3.5 million purchase and was absorbed into the surrounding Forest Service holdings. Although the ranch has been closed to the public for many years, it still generates intrigue today, especially in regards to what is claimed to have happened to its former occupants. The Bradshaw Ranch has a rich history dating back to its homesteading days in 1920. However, it was not until 1960 that Hollywood stuntman Bob Bradshaw purchased the property and gave it its current name. The ranch was largely used as a movie set, and it seems that he and his wife Linda also used the place as a home. This though would gradually unravel before them as they began to experience a series of unusual events at this place. Let's start from the beginning. Shortly after moving in, this whole ordeal started when Linda first recounted that she never quite felt alone at the ranch, particularly at night. She couldn't quite put her finger on what exactly was wrong, but this eerie feeling was echoed by their dogs who would bark and growl at something who Linda would later dub the intruders. Despite searching the property numerous times, they could never find any trespassers. Linda described living in a perpetual state of having to be alert, especially during the night. While this was going on, Linda said that these feelings began to worsen over time and strange things started to happen. One night, while watching a meteor shower above their property, she noticed something peculiar. She relayed that some of the lights appeared to be moving independently, deviating from the trajectory of the meteor shower. Although she didn't dwell on it or really think about it too much at the time, this wouldn't be the last time she saw lights. The next time, she would report that they were much closer. Over the course of the next few months, Linda and her son often went on walks around their property. During these walks, they occasionally observed small, blinking lights. Despite their remote location, at first, I wonder if Linda suspected that someone might have been messing with them. However, as these unusual events persisted, she would later reach the conclusion that there was something very wrong and unusual happening at the ranch. Both Linda and her son stated that on one particularly intense evening, they began to see lights flashing throughout the ranch. One of the lights approached the old adobe homestead, illuminating its windows. Though Linda could not determine the nature of the lights and had no idea what exactly they were witnessing, she believed that they were the intruders that had caused so much unease on the ranch. It also seems that some incidents may have been more personal than others. Linda wrote a book detailing her experiences at Bradshaw Ranch, which I'll put a link to in the description below. If you're into this kind of thing, I'm sure it'll be a great read and well worth it. Linda also shows a lot of pictures that she says are of these events, but I'm probably not allowed to show them here from the book. Anyway, within the book, Linda detailed an odd event that took place one evening on her land. Linda was a budding photographer and she loved to take pictures, but this evening, as she was doing so, she said that she was suddenly engulfed by a white mist that she described as being a thick, fog-like mass. She said that the weather was completely clear just moments before, no moisture in the air, and there was no sense of the mist holding a sensation. It wasn't hot, cold, or wet. But, she said, while there was no physical feeling, there was a sense of dread that consumed her, and she knew that she had to get out of there ASAP, which she did, and sadly didn't share any more information on this particular incident. Not long after Linda's incident involving the fog, she relayed that she experienced 2 more incidents in a short time span in the exact same place on the ranch. Linda enjoyed going out on these walks during the evening, and one night she was startled by a sudden bright light shining down on her. She said it was as if a giant TV had been turned on right above her, and while it was only there for a few seconds, it was enough to make her jump out of her skin. This incident would repeat, but this time the light wasn't as bright, and Linda believed that she saw something that night. For just a moment, she believed that someone or something was nearby, stood upright and carrying something in its arms. But as quick as she saw it, whatever it was vanished back into the pitch blackness of the night. Linda, among others, have questioned whether this particular lonely ranch might hold a window to another place, and this seems to be the incident that made her take this view. This window, Linda believes, isn't always open, but when it does open, the weirdness she described, and potentially even something darker, ensues. There is so little information floating around on the internet on this place that you really have to search quite extensively, even for small snippets. I did manage to find some quotes from Linda directly, who seemed to talk about a few of the incidents shared a moment ago. I saw some really incredible things. I saw a red ball of light shoot straight into the sky and shoot out. I saw things flying that I couldn't explain. While I was photographing all of this, I sensed something behind me. I turned around, and right above the bush was a pulsating ball of light, and it was shone right at me. My son, Victor, was very skeptical when I first told him. I would tell him that these things are out there, and he used to tease me. He would come into my home singing the Twilight theme song to give me a hard time. Victor went on to say that he saw things at the ranch that he couldn't explain. He described that he's very familiar with this area, but had seen what seemed to be animals that he'd never seen before. Sadly, there wasn't a lot of details or descriptions of what he said he'd seen, and I couldn't find any kind of elaboration. But speaking of one of the incidents that we spoke about a minute ago, she said this. A huge, brilliant light showed up in the sky, and it was octangular. I got 2 frames before it flicked back out again. All I could see with my eyes was the light, but when I picked up the photograph, there was a picture of another place. It showed something flying through the air and telephone poles, but there are no telephone poles here. It almost looks like it might have been from the shore of an ocean. There was a figure in the far left corner. We feel that this is indicative of showing us that there is another dimension right here. There is a connection to an opening. The issue with statements like that is it's said so definitively about something we know so little about. For example, theoretical physicists do point to the idea that there may be other dimensions out there beyond what we're able to see. Superstring theory, which is one of the leading theories today that tries to explain the nature of the universe, contends that there may be 10 dimensions. 9 of those being the kind of space that we exist within, and 1 being time itself. The problem with this idea of having a window to another place is that superstring theory posits that these extra dimensions beyond the 3 dimensions that we're familiar with are incredibly small. It actually states that these tiny dimensions are thought to be compactified, meaning that they are curled up into tiny, unobservable scales. It is said that in theory, there could be life that exists within these other dimensions, but that is extremely speculative. Especially since we're talking on a scale so small or compactified that it is difficult to imagine life the way in which we're familiar with could exist within them. Though, I suppose that doesn't speak to life as we don't know it. But largely, that's the point I'm making. We know so little about this that it's difficult to be making such definitive statements and tunnel visioning into one conclusion. Though of course, if everything Linda is saying is true, then it does seem that this would constitute something that we have no understanding of at all. Whatever the case may be though, that was her particular read and opinion of the situation. She also believed that they were dealing with some kind of intelligence on the ranch, as she stated this. One evening Tom took the spotlight and flashed 3 times. The object flashed back at us 3 times. At that point we knew there was an intelligence. That's quite the scary thought, linking an intelligence to something that we can't see or do anything about. Linda has said that while she didn't feel a sense of dread every time an incident happened, sometimes it was overwhelming. She believes that there are living things, beings, walking on that land that we cannot see. She said that on occasion you can hear them and they will make it known that they are close, but you can't see them. For instance, on one occasion, she rushed outside after hearing her dogs barking like crazy. When she went outside, she didn't immediately understand what was going on, as her dogs looked like they were about to go on the attack, but there was nothing there. She said that the hair on the dog's back was completely stood on end and that they were all focused on absolutely nothing. At least nothing she could physically see. She scanned and tried to look at whatever was causing such a fuss, but she couldn't see anything. All of a sudden, she started to feel sick, and something that she believes was roughly her height hissed in her face just a few feet away. While she couldn't see anything, in her mind this was an intruder. The next incident would occur to Victor, who was once skeptical of everything going on, and this one was unlike anything described up until this point, so let's get bizarre if we haven't already. Victor was with a friend of his, and she happened to have a young daughter, and the three of them were spending time together in a small house on the ranch. In the early hours of the morning, Victor heard something and looked out the window where he saw what was described as something hovering in the air before coming down to the ground. This light, or whatever it was, remained stationary before he and his friend were startled when four small beings walked past the window that they were both looking out of. The pair were scared at this point, waiting in silence until they thought that the coast was clear. They then raced to the car and drove to the house Linda was staying in. In a panic, they awoke her and she ran downstairs, where they together saw that another small figure was outside the front door. Linda didn't understand why, but she had a sudden urge to leave the house and confront whatever it was outside their home. Upon leaving the house and entering the pitch blackness of the night, she said that she could no longer see them, but she knew that they were there, hiding. They soon left, but she said that she was left with a horrible dark feeling about the whole experience. She said that they didn't know what they wanted, but it didn't seem good. This wasn't the end of these incidents either, and Linda felt that whatever they were, they began to grow more bold and started to enter the house and mess with members of the family. For instance, Victor left the property one morning to go on a short 2-hour hike. By noon, Linda started to become concerned as she hadn't heard from him, and by 5 PM, her husband and his son and another friend set out on horseback to retrieve him. They searched for 3 hours and could find no trace of Victor before returning empty-handed. Linda beat herself up about not calling search and rescue sooner and now realised that they wouldn't be able to initiate a search until the morning. Something completely bizarre happened at 3 AM though, and Linda received a call from Victor, who was 15 miles away in a town called Cottonwood. He would later relay that he had no recollection of the event, and the last thing he remembered was that he was walking and all of a sudden it was night time and he didn't recognise his surroundings. These were only a small handful of some of the events talked about throughout the book, and there are many more, with plenty more details than I was able to share in this segment. Now, not in reference to any individual event or claim in particular, some thoughts and criticisms I have regarding the whole topic is that I was unable to find very much at all being reported on this place, in terms of unusual things happening before Bob and Linda owned the ranch. I did find a newspaper clipping from 1922 which is supposed to be about Sedona, but not in reference to the ranch specifically, though I'm not able to verify where the clipping is actually in reference to, nor the newspaper it came from. Reports were made of strange lights at night. These 2 lights were first noticed Tuesday night, and they have appeared for 4 consecutive nights. Probably one of the most unusual circumstances surrounding these lights is the fact that they appear at identically the same spot and time every night. They appear on the hill to the south of the town at about 9 o'clock and burn for 5 minutes. These lights seem suspended 15 feet from the ground and they can be discerned for a long distance. Again, I just want to reiterate that I have absolutely no idea if that is even from Sedona, though it was claimed to be, which perhaps might be rather dubious. If that is in fact the case, then I suppose there is an older, historical basis for weird lights being seen in the area. Though again, even if we're going to accept that this snippet was from Sedona, it was not specifically in reference to the homestead, which is now a part of the ranch. Aside from that, the only real articles I can find range from the 60s to the 90s, and they're mostly talking about movie stars and movies that were filmed at the ranch. Obviously, before the 60s, you can't search for Bradshaw Ranch and you have to be a bit more eloquent or creative with your searching. But even so, I can't find anything at all to suggest that there was any weirdness being reported there before Bob and Linda acquired the ranch. That's not to say that there definitely wasn't, of course. You might have people that were terrified of being ridiculed for saying such things and bringing it up. Or perhaps there are mentions of these things in the past and I'm just not able to find them. That might be the case. Another point of contention I'd highlight, and this one doesn't really have much to do with Bob or Linda, but Linda, among many others who have an interest in such things, have speculated that the area is a so-called vortex site. Again, I don't think we know everything about everything, and I'm open to an idea like this. But the issue I have is that there are no clearly defined definitions of these things. Some definitions of vortexes in relation to strange phenomena you might find state that they are places of strong, concentrated energy fields of some kind, usually magnetic, in which these kind of weird experiences are possible and ensue within the general area. But then I would also point to this Sedona visitors pamphlet that describes vortexes as enhanced energy sites that hold certain benefits that are highlighted. But then they also go on to say that they have no electric or magnetic field, I guess. Which to me basically translates to, there are vortexes here, but you can't observe or measure them in any meaningful sense, so just take my word for it. Going back much further, the indigenous people of Sedona have long considered the area to be sacred. Sedona is identified as being one of the 10 most sacred spots on Earth. For natives in the area, this is very old news. The Yavapai people have a creation myth revolving around Montezuma as well and Boynton Canyon. Many Native American tribes journeyed to Sedona for healing and other sacred ceremonies, but did not live in the intense energy fields. They too mention healing and such things, which I suppose is quite interesting that they associated the area with that, but apparently they didn't live in the supposed energy fields that cannot be measured in any way, shape or form. I only bring this up because on occasion you'll find interesting things that the natives say about certain areas. For instance, the Cherokee people make plenty of references to little people who they associated with their vanishing tribe members. Near Mount Shasta, indigenous people have referenced floating rocks which swallow people whole. These are interesting things, but there doesn't seem to be any mention of anything anomalous in that sense here, aside from the healing. These things can quickly get out of hand too with certain claims, because as mentioned at the start of this video, the ranch and land was federally acquired in 2003. It's stated that this was for the purpose of conducting long-term research on the climate, and this takes place on up to around 22 acres at the site. The Southwest Experimental Garden Array holds a special use permit within the National Forest Service to conduct this kind of research for up to 20 years. So presumably that will be expiring this year. As far as I can tell, the scientists who study and work there haven't reported anything out of the ordinary. The claims though purport that this is just a front, and the site was actually confiscated from its former occupants in 2003 because of the portal, or vortex, or whichever it is. There's no actual evidence in support of that though to suggest that's the case. I also do just want to say that in closing, Linda herself did actually come across as very sincere about her experiences. So perhaps she and her family were experiencing something completely out of the ordinary. It's also worth noting again too that her son Victor was once skeptical and teased Linda before reaching a similar conclusion about the place that she did. I'd also just like to mention the book again, which is linked in the description below. If you want to know more about this place and the events that happen there, then that's the place to do it. I suppose with that, it's a good time to end this video and hand it over to you in the comments below. What do you make of this story? Do you think that there's something odd going on there? Are you skeptical of all the claims? Let me know. I'd just like to take the time to thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons who've been running around and disappearing on the screen. If you found the video interesting, then please do leave a like, hit the bell and subscribe if you haven't already. If not, then feel free to leave a dislike. I'm just looking for your honest opinion either way. I hope that you've had a great day or evening depending on where you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Be safe guys. Peace.